Hello and welcome to the Science of. Each episode, we pick a video game and put it under the microscope. We examine every detail to determine the science and math behind our favorite video games. This episode is all about Spelunky, which is by far one of my favorite games. And I thought, what better game to kick off the series than Spelunky? With that, let's jump right into the science of Spelunky. The first thing we must do to understand the depth of Spelunky is to determine the size and scale. For this episode, we're going to start off by assuming the character we play as is of average size. The average size of an adult can range from 5 feet 2 inches to 5 feet 6 inches. Let's split the difference and assume our character is about 5 feet 4 inches. Now we can use that information to extrapolate the rough size of the cave system itself. Spelunky's background is divided into blocks, which are slightly taller than the player character. If we assume the character is 5 feet 4 inches, I think it's safe to say the individual blocks are about 6 feet high. If the block is a square and a presumed cube, more on that later, we can determine the dimensions of the block to be 6 feet by 6 feet by 6 feet. Using this newly gained knowledge, let's determine the height of the main door of the cave system. It stands roughly 3 blocks tall, meaning the door is about 18 feet tall. That's huge! By the same token, a standard level is about 40 blocks deep from the top of the game screen to the bottom, or about 240 feet deep. Let's remember that there are generally 4 levels per biome and 4 standard biomes. We also need to consider Olmec's level. This would mean from top to bottom, the entire cave system is roughly 4,080 feet deep. Now, if we include the secret levels, that adds an additional 5 levels, which includes the Golden Temple, plus the final boss's chamber. This leaves us with a total of 5,520 feet, or just over a mile. If we compare that to Earth's crust, Spelunky barely scratches the surface. Now that we have an understanding of the general layout of the game, let's dig deeper into the specifics, no pun intended. First, we should examine both the walking speed and running speed. Based on the very scientific testing that I did, the walking speed of the player character is about 5 blocks per second. That works out to be about 30 feet per second. When the character runs on a flat surface, the player can cover a distance of about 10 blocks, which translates to about 60 feet per second. For comparison, some of the fastest runners in the world can reach speeds of over 30 feet per second. So in other words, slow down! Let's consider the character's jumping, as it is an important part of the game. The player can jump up to 2 blocks and grab the ledge. This means that at a minimum, the character is getting about 6 feet of height from a single jump. On average, a trained individual can jump about 24 to 28 inches. For those of us who are untrained, we're looking at around 16 to 20 inches. But what about the long jump, you say? Well, the player's character can span some large distances across the level. Generally, the player can make a jump that's about 5 blocks across. This translates to roughly 30 feet. Not bad. The furthest long jump recorded is just over 30 feet, so our player character is on par with the best. Not only are we spending a lot of time jumping, but our character spends a lot of time falling, or at least mine does. The player character can drop 11 blocks or 66 feet without taking damage. That's pretty impressive, considering if the player character was real, well, let's just say it would be game over. The player character is also capable of some superhuman feats of strength. We are, of course, talking about the carved blocks that the character can push around. As we stated earlier, assuming that each block is 6 by 6 by 6, a carved stone block is about 216 cubed feet of solid stone. Question is, what kind of stone? We're looking for a stone that is fairly close to the surface and is also good for carving. After some research, it seems we have but one option: limestone. This stone is generally close to the surface, much like the entrance to the cave. Additionally, limestone is known to be good for carving. Now the question is, how much weight does that have our character pushing? On average, limestone weighs about 150 pounds per cubic foot, so we could estimate that a single block in Spelunky is about 32,400 pounds, or just over 16 tons. To put that into perspective, a loaded semi-truck could weigh around 16 tons or more. It's a lot of brute force coming from such a small character. I don't think I'd have that much luck pushing a semi. How about you? Of course, the levels of Spelunky are filled with more dangers than just heavy blocks and huge leaps. There are plenty of enemies lurking about. One of the most encountered enemies is the green snake. While the snake is generally not an issue, if we consider its size, the snake stands about 5 feet tall. Yeek! The spiders tend to be a little bit smaller, but still appear to be close to about half the size of the player, making them 2 to 3 feet tall. That's a lot of spider. That pales in the comparison to the giant spider that covers 2 full blocks, or potentially 12 feet across. For comparison, the largest known spider is the Goliath bird eater, which spans just 11 measly inches. Let's examine the bosses of Spelunky. Olmec is the main boss of the game. We can assume he is a cube shape and is roughly 3 blocks by 3 blocks by 3 blocks, or 18 feet all around. Some quick math shows us that Olmec is about 5,832 cubic feet of pure gold! I know, I hear you shouting. But then what's he worth? Well, give me a second, we're gonna get there. A cubic foot of gold weighs just under 1,200 pounds, meaning Olmec weighs just over 7 million pounds. I know what you're asking. How much is he worth? Well, currently, gold is worth about $2,000 per ounce, and there are 16 ounces in a pound. This means that Olmec, in all his golden glory, would be worth about 224 billion. This would make Olmec just short of being the richest person in the world. To add insult to injury, if you defeat Olmec, you get a reward of just $50,000 worth of treasure. What a ripoff! Moving on to the true Spelunky boss, his tower is about 14 blocks tall, meaning he is 84 feet above the starting location. The boss himself is about 8 blocks tall, which means he sits 48 feet high. The boss's tower contains about 52 gems. For the sake of argument, let's assume that each ruby is worth about $100,000, given their size and quality. This would mean that if you collected all of the gems, you would have a cool $5.2 million. Solid gold bosses and stacks of rubies are not the only treasure within Spelunky. We can regularly find stacks of gold bars. Fun fact, gold bar weighs just over 27 pounds. Considering their weight, the player character must have a super strong back. With a single gold bar worth approximately $750,000, this means the largest stack would net you about $2,250,000. That makes the trip into this cave well worth it. I think from now on I'm just going to grab a gold stack or two and leave. Let's round off this episode by examining some of the items commonly used in Spelunkies. For starters, ropes have a maximum length of 42 feet. Along with carrying all that heavy treasure, the player character must also carry about 168 feet of rope. That calculates out to about 17 pounds. That's a lot to carry, especially when considering the player character also is responsible for rescuing a full-size pug, not to mention other adult humans. There's just not enough pockets for all this. I will leave you with one last fact to consider. It's not uncommon to find a sacrificing table within the cave system. Doesn't look too bad, but considering it's about 12 feet across, that's pretty huge. What's worse is if you break the table, you'll find it filled with loads of 3-foot tall spiders. Talk about bad luck. On that note, that brings us to the end of the first episode of The Science Of. Now, I really enjoyed doing the research for this video and absolutely plan to do more of these in the future. If you guys liked it, or if you had any future suggestions for games you wish for me to break down, please let me know down below in the comment section. But for now, I'm going to have to leave this one here. So thank you guys so much for watching or listening. And I hope you guys enjoyed everything. And I will see you guys in the next one. See ya!